The war against Iran is becoming significantly more dramatic today. Donald Trump has reached a point where he can't simply back down without it looking like weakness. He has created pressure around himself that is very difficult to get out of. And the latest developments show that instead of quickly breaking Iran, we are seeing quite the opposite. Tehran is not backing down. On the contrary, it continues to test his nerves, his credibility, and his willingness to go even further. Trump has now taken it to another level again. On Truth Social, he posted a vulgar message telling Iran to open the Hormuz Strait, or else more American strikes would follow. Later, through the Wall Street Journal and another post, he also added a specific deadline, Tuesday evening Eastern American Time, and he mentioned attacks on Iranian power plants and bridges. That's no longer just strong rhetoric for the domestic scene. That's a public ultimatum that he set himself, so if nothing changes, he'll either have to act or admit that his threat didn't work. This is exactly where the core of the problem lies. From what we see today, further escalation is more likely than Iran simply giving up. Tehran already rejected, a few days ago according to Iranian media, even a 48-hour ceasefire proposal mediated through third parties. At the same time, it turns out that even after more than a month of war, Iran's ability to resist has not been broken. American sources, quoted by Reuters, say that they can confirm with certainty the destruction of only about a third of Iran's missile arsenal. That means Iran still has the means to respond. And the political aspect is also important. Iran did not break even after losing a significant part of its top leadership. Reuters had previously detailed that, in the initial strikes, the highest-ranking Iranian officials were killed, including the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and other top military and security figures. Nevertheless, the new regime did not capitulate, and Iranian officials have been deliberately appearing in public in recent days to demonstrate that the state is still functioning and that the war has not broken them. Therefore, it doesn't make much sense to assume that right now, after everything they've already been through, they would suddenly decide to give up just because Trump toughened his stance in one post. So if the United States really did strike another piece of Iranian infrastructure, according to Trump's threats, it could cause Iran significant damage in the short term. Attacks on power plants could cause further power outages, and strikes on bridges would worsen logistics, supply, and the movement of military equipment. But even such a strike doesn't automatically mean that Iran would suddenly give in. That's because Iran doesn't need to achieve a classic military victory over the United States. It's enough for Iran to keep the Strait so dangerous that ships, insurers, and traders will avoid it. And that's exactly the biggest weakness in Trump's logic. Even now, it's not true that the situation can simply be described as either a completely normal or a completely closed Hormuz. Reuters reported today that in recent days, Iran has allowed some ships without American or Israeli ties to pass through the strait. For example, vessels connected to Malaysia, Oman, France, or Japan. This is important because it shows that Tehran doesn't treat the Strait of Hormuz as just an on-off switch. They're making it a targeted weapon. They can allow something, block something else, and use it to create pressure as needed. So Trump isn't facing a simple open or closed decision. He's facing an opponent who knows how to dose chaos. A less likely Iranian retaliation would therefore not look like some big frontline war with America, but rather a series of asymmetric strikes on sensitive targets. We're already seeing that. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards have claimed responsibility for attacks on petrochemical facilities in the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain, and have also stated that if attacks on civilian targets in Iran continue, they will escalate strikes against American economic interests. The Kuwaiti state oil company today confirmed serious material damage after a drone attack. That means the Iranian response is no longer just a theory. It is already underway. If Trump had struck even harder after his ultimatum, Iran would very likely have targeted what hurts them the least today and the West the most. That is, attacks on energy infrastructure in the Gulf, with drones and missiles against ports, refineries, steel plants, logistics hubs, and probably more pressure on shipping as well. Associated Press also reports that Tehran is already hinting at the possibility of pressure on Bab al-Mandeb. If instability were to spread significantly there as well, the problem would no longer be just a regional one. That would be a direct hit to two key arteries of global trade at once. We don't have to imagine too much what such an escalation would trigger in the world, because we are already seeing the first consequences. According to Reuters, oil is close to $120 per barrel. Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries Plus did approve an increase in production quotas by 206,000 barrels per day today, but Reuters describes it more as a symbolic step because the problem is not just in the quotas, but in the fact that a huge volume of oil and gas usually passes through Hormuz, and if transportation is disrupted, it can't be quickly replaced. Analysts also warn that if the Strait remains paralyzed for a longer period, the price could go above $150 per barrel. And that immediately brings other things with it. More expensive insurance for tankers, more expensive transportation, higher costs for industry, greater inflationary pressure, weaker growth. Reuters wrote today that the war is already pushing down business activity in Saudi Arabia and worsening sentiment in Egypt as well. In other words, this is no longer just a conflict between two countries or a single region. It's a shock that's quickly spilling over into the global economy. And the longer it lasts, the less it becomes a military problem and the more it becomes a global price problem. That's why Trump's recent statements don't make much sense either, saying that Hormuz isn't really a problem for the United States and that other countries that get their oil through there should be the ones to open it up. Yes, in a narrow technical sense, America today has less direct dependence on oil from the Persian Gulf than Europe or Asia. In 2024, about 500,000 barrels per day from Persian Gulf countries went to the United States through Hormuz, which was roughly 7% of American oil imports and about 2% of United States liquid petroleum consumption. But that doesn't mean at all that this problem doesn't concern the United States. Oil is a global commodity, and the American driver doesn't fill up based on whether a tanker physically came directly from Hormuz to an American port. He fills up based on what's happening on the global oil market. The price of oil is the biggest factor in determining American gasoline prices. America may operate on its own West Texas Intermediate benchmark, but during a global oil shock, American fuel prices in practice behave more according to Brent. Even today, the average price of gasoline in the United States is above $4 per gallon. So even if America weren't existentially dependent on Hormuz barrels, the economic shock from a disruption of the Strait would still hit it. Through gasoline, through inflation, through logistics, and through political pressure at home. And that's exactly why Trump is getting caught in a trap he helped create himself. He can't simply say that America is leaving. Hormuz remains in trouble. Oil is expensive. The world is nervous. Iranian attacks continue, and he's still the winner. That's not what victory looks like. If he ended the war without restoring normal shipping and without curbing Iran's ability to blackmail the world through energy routes, he would leave behind more expensive chaos and a strengthened impression that Iran endured more than Washington expected. And that would be politically and strategically more of a failure than a triumph. So for Trump, the situation is uncomfortable in both directions. If he doesn't strike, he looks weak after making public threats himself. If he strikes, he could trigger an even bigger regional and global crisis without any certainty that it would actually open Hormuz. And this is probably the most accurate picture of the whole situation today. Iran is not pushing him into a simple choice between peace and force. Iran is forcing him to pick between a bad option and a potentially worse one. If you like the video, I would appreciate a like and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones I'm working on. You can support my work through thanks. And if you want to get the video to more people, click on share. I appreciate it.